unless you're Phil Heath, no, but like everyone I feel like is beatable because I've seen so many times where, someone could beat someone, 2 weeks before the show, and then there's another show 2 weeks later, and they flip flop because peaking. Like,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sup Talk Radio. Grab your protein bottles, grab your chicken and rice, and strap in. Tonight, we're going to have a fantastic podcast. In a week of negativity and craziness within the industry, we're going to shelve that. We're going to talk positivity and anything else that the story takes us. Tonight, my guest, Mr. Nate Spear. Nate, welcome to the show, brother.
hey, what's up, brother? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been listening to your podcast lately, and you've been putting out some good fire. So appreciate the content.
Nate, I appreciate it, brother. It means a lot. Let's get kind of the negativity, the impetus out of the way here. Okay, you shared with me that you were an addict back in the day. Let's quickly cover that, shelve it, and then let's talk bodybuilding.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, just it is sort of a big part of my story, just because it is what got me into bodybuilding, right? So, like, I started bodybuilding at 26 back in 2012, and pretty much that started because I got sober. So, growing up, I was heavily into the sort of drug scene or whatever, the party scene.
Okay.
And I would say, I mean, it was a lot to do with just my my internal feelings. Just after being away and being older, you can sort of look back and be like, okay, I can sort of understand more. And I just think I was just dealing with a lot of stuff, internally, and just would, get high essentially and feel better, and not feel like I'm inside my own body, which I was sort of feel like I was trying to escape a little bit, as far as like being in my own skin and like insecurities, that kind of stuff. So I got sober and clean in 2012 of July,
Okay.
and they started bringing us to the gym, and started working out, and I quickly excelled much quicker than my other peers that were going to the gym with me, and I was like, oh, I might be good at this thing, and I was already competitive too, from like sports in high school and stuff, so.
Nate, was there a rock bottom moment, if you don't mind me asking, like what made you finally make that transition?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, for me, and like other addicts or people that everyone, so many people deal with it now, right? Whether it's a family member or friend, blah blah blah. So for me, it was really like I really had to hit a hard rock bottom, because I had already been, before I went to two other rehabs. So like, you'll talk to a lot of addicts, and a lot of them have to try more than just one time. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people get it that first time or ever. So I'd been to two rehabs before that. Honestly, I'd been to prison. I was homeless, so I'd seen it all. So I'd had rock bottoms at that point, but they're more like physical or external. I would say, like, it's one of those things where sometimes when you're an addict, you go through those things, and in the moment, yeah, it sucks. You try to quit, but then it's easy to go back to your old way of thinking, like, oh, well, I've been good for a little bit. Maybe I'll just dabble, and then it's like you're off to the races. So
Yep.
this last time, my rock bottom was just more spiritual and emotional. I was just like pretty much ready to kill myself, if I'm being honest. And I was at that point where I just like literally hated myself. I was miserable, very depressed. At that point, it was not, there was no fun to it. You know what I mean? And it was just to the point where I was like, wow, I was just thinking, like, is this going to be my life? Am I going to be like 50, or make it even that far, and like just be
Yeah.
some bum drug addict, So I was just at that point where I was just like serious desperation of like, whatever I have to do, I will do it. And at that point, that's when everything changed, because I took action. So a lot of people, they don't really take action. They sort of will it or think it, or, say it like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. But for a lot of addicts, they really have to put the work in to change themselves, as far as like
Sure.
internally, how we deal with things, how we cope with things, a lot of emotions that probably haven't been touched or looked at, just a lot of internal work had to take place. And, I did that. And I think that's a lot of reason why I ended up sticking and staying clean this time, So that was my rock bottom, as far as that goes. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, because obviously, you hit a rock bottom, but now you're on the other side of this. Positive. Sounds like life is in order for you.
Right. Yeah. I'm so grateful for today. And that's another thing too that I'm very happy about. I have so much gratitude in life, even though it's been, I've been clean for 12 plus years now. I still carry that gratitude because of my past, situation. So now it's like everything is just so really good, and little things go a long way for me, like just having a nice car or like a nice apartment,
Sure.
stuff like that for me. I'm very grateful and very like, I take that with pride and I feel that, like little things. So I'm grateful that I've been able to, embrace that and still hold on to that from my recovery.
Yep. You mentioned sports in high school. What were your sports did you specialize in?
I was definitely big into basketball. I mean, I was a kid that grew up and played all the sports, but then once you get to like, middle school, junior high, you start to figure out, oh, what sport am I good at? What do I really love? And you figure out, oh, I really got to level up and dedicate that for year round, right? So
Sure.
basketball was the sport for me. I started going to like basketball camps and like, getting exposed to like good basketball players and like playing AAU and, so playing year round and just really giving up all those other sports to pursue basketball, which unfortunately, I'm 5'10", 5'11", and, don't have the greatest vertical. So that was sort of, short lived after high school. You know how that goes. So
Okay, so I'll put you on the spot here. Jordan or LeBron? Because it sounds like you with your age, you're right in the middle of both of them almost. Not in the
yeah,
middle, but
it's hard. I mean, I got to go with Jordan just because probably he's such an icon to me and just the nostalgia, right? So like I remember even I got to see Jordan play at one game at the old Boston Garden,
oh
which
wow.
I was like 5 or 6, but I still remember a little bit, maybe like 7 or 8. But my older sister, who was like my half sister, she was from another. She had a different mom than me. She was a little bit older, so she was like more like a big sister, a young mom to me. So she would
Okay.
take me to these cool sort of things, and I was lucky enough to see Jordan play one game at the old Boston Garden, which was like pretty crazy to me. So
Do you remember? Was it Bird? Was Bird still there? Or I don't even remember that far back.
yeah, no, not now. This was like on the tail end of Mike. I think like he'd already been 45 and he went back to
Okay,
23. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's a
that's
crazy
awesome.
story. But yeah, I mean, LeBron is crazy. It's just crazy that me and him, I think we're the same age. So I'm 38 and he's still playing, and like he's the only one that's like from his draft or year or whatever that's still playing, which is that's
Yeah.
insane to me. Like that's like I couldn't imagine playing professional basketball at 38 or whatever he is.
I'm not a huge fan, but I just learned the other day, and I didn't realize that his son is playing alongside of him, and I think that's a first, father and son playing together.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's crazy, Bronny or whatever. Yeah.
Because I know, not to get too far off the path here, because I know Doc Rivers
Yep.
supposedly coached his son, but
Yep.
again, nobody's ever played
Yeah,
together, father son, which is pretty cool.
it's insane. Yeah, it just goes to show you like how yeah, it's just crazy. His athleticism and recovery and just being able to stay healthy.
So you mentioned obviously you get out of rehab, you hit the gym. Okay, now at that point, is it just kind of to maybe move one addiction into something of a healthier habit?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm a pretty honest and straightforward person and realistic, but it's definitely another addiction. I mean, you gotta
Sure.
you gotta be pretty real about it because like it's such a to be good at this. Most of us are probably a little bit addicted to it or sort of get some kind of return to our what I mean endorphins or whatever you want to say. Like for me, it was
Yeah.
like it felt like a little bit like chasing high, because I was almost like going in the gym, not feeling very well or feeling very good, like in the beginning. And then I'd go to the gym and I'd feel amazing. And I was like, wow, that feels so good. Like, I want to keep doing that. So when I first started, it wasn't even like I was trying to bodybuild. It was just like training hard was
Hmm.
like the medicine for me, just going in there, grinding it, getting a good pump. Like, and that's all, it was so simple, back then. It was just like, that's all I thought about was just like, man, I just want to go in, get a great pump, and I feel amazing after. It's pretty simple. So yeah, I would definitely say it's obviously not the same regard, like because I'm not hurting people, getting criminal charges, because sometimes you get like people online that are like, I think they just like to argue or like make you try to look bad or something. But like people will be like, oh well, you're just training one addiction for another, like in a negative way. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
well, I'm not hurting anyone, and my mom is not like by her bedside worried about me, getting a call or you know what I mean, like stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's definitely a different degree for sure.
So when do you start realizing you're lifting weights? When do you start seeing improvements, and when do you say, "Hey, maybe I got something here"?
Honestly, pretty quick. Like it's
Really?
pretty wild. I would say I was benching 315, 3 plates aside for like the first like in the 2 or 3 weeks like in uh in
Wow.
in rehab, and I was actually I responded very well naturally too before I even switched to the PED side, but because I
Yep.
did a couple natural shows first, but yeah, I responded very well and very quickly. I would say it didn't really take me too long to get to a certain look where people like, oh, are you on stuff? You know what I mean? Like I did my first show after 9 months of training, so it was pretty.
Wow.
it definitely happened pretty quick, I would say, for sure.
Did you do it yourself, or did someone kind of tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you got a good physique. Maybe you should step on stage," kind of thing?
Yeah, so I would say more so people were saying it to me. Like I would be in the gym and other guys that I looked up to were like looking at like, oh, they're the big dogs, because I was still a new guy, I just started, I didn't
Yeah,
know anything. And these guys were like coming up to me, hey, you ever think you do a show? And I was like, but what do you mean, like, oh, bodybuilding show? Like I've never really thought about it, like I was just at such a point where I was just like I needed that, training to feel better where I was
yeah,
at in my addiction recovery or whatever. So I wasn't even really thinking that much far past that, you know what I mean? But yeah, enough people come up to you and then you start looking at it, you're like, oh, maybe I could, because I knew what bodybuilding was and I was already a fan of like muscular guys and like how they looked and like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like that was always cool to me, like the big jack guys. I remember seeing Jay Cutler in a magazine like when I was younger and just being like, that's insane. Like that's so cool.
yeah, yeah. So did you have a coach or anything, or did you go into this first show blind? And I guess how did you know what to eat, what to train?
So yeah, it's actually funny. Like the first show I did was, like I said, in 2012, or it was actually probably 2013. So September 2013, I did my first show. And at that point, there wasn't not really like Instagram. I don't know. It might have just barely started. And like Facebook was like, so there was no coaching and, there was no like everyone was a coach, so it was like very minimal as far as resources go. But so I prepped my own self for that
Okay.
show and I really just used YouTube and just like at that point there was like Chris Jones and like Lane Norton and like the
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers were just peaking at that point. And I was just using that information. I actually used a lot of Lane Norton stuff from bodybuilding.com. He had like how to peak and like all
Yeah,
these
yeah.
protocols and stuff. And so I did use a lot of that information. And like I won't lie, like I really just didn't really know what I was doing, and I just really knew I had to be shredded. So I really just starved myself, if I'm being honest. I used a lot of tuna and mustard, and
Okay.
just like very, very basic, very old school thinking of just like I'd use like tuna and lettuce, and like I wouldn't even have cheat meals or like have a refeed day. I didn't even know what that was really at that point.
Yep.
It was just like, okay, I just know I need to get like as shredded as I can, and I didn't really worry about losing muscle. I was just like just my one goal is just to be in great shape, and it worked out pretty well. I mean, I got second in my first natural show and looked pretty good. I mean, I still have pictures, and I'm like, that's actually not bad, for a first show, coaching myself and starving myself pretty much. And I did a lot of cardio too, so it was just like one of those things where more, because I remember, like I said, I'm an addict too, so I have that
Yep.
thinking of like a lot of bodybuilders. I think have that sort of like brain wave type thing where it's like I need to do more, like you know what I mean. We're so extreme, right?
So you lightweight, middleweight? What did you step on stage at?
So the first show I did, I was 180, 180
So
pounds.
middleweight. Okay.
So yeah, and I don't even know if they had like weight classes then because it was the natural organization. I think they had like class A, B, and C.
Oh, okay.
It was weird, but yeah. So I was probably like either a middleweight or very bottom of the light heavyweight, something like that. So
So were you actually full, or were you just like lean and shredded?
mm, definitely lean and shredded for sure. Like probably could have had more carbs. Probably could have like pulled back like earlier on, like before. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff that I know now, right? Like
Yep. The
um,
one the one thing though people never prepare you for is to actually stepping on stage. How did you handle that? Or was it like shit, 1,000 people looking at you in your underwear?
yeah, I honestly was not prepared for that. If I'm being honest with you, like my mom actually did my own tan. Like so, we used the Dream Tan. I don't know if you remember that stuff.
I
It's like
used to use Protan, bro. My sister with a paintbrush. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So my mom did my tan and stuff, and like posing practice. I literally saw this one lady one time who was a judge and like a promoter down in our area, and she went through it like posing for like 30 minutes or an hour, and it was like that was it, right? So it was really just like, hey, like hope for the best and hope I don't look stupid, you know.
Yep, yep.
And luckily enough, I've always picked up. I'm not like the best poser, but I'm pretty good at the mandatories, and I'm
Hmm.
always good at like seeing a picture of someone and then like mimicking that posing wise. So that's sort of how I picked up my posing. It was just like, oh, like that person's front double I know looks right, so I'm going to try to like you know copy him or whatever, right?
Yep. So you take second place. Do you got the bug now? You hungry? You ready to go for the next one?
Oh yeah, I was in love with it. I as soon as yeah, just all together, I just love bodybuilding. I still do to this day. I'm a wicked nerd and just like watch all the podcasts and like know who all the guys are. And I'm always like sort of in really, really into it. But I've always been that person, probably a little bit of addict uh, mentality. Like I've always been all in at like one thing that I'm doing, you know. So I would never have like a bunch. I've never been good at like having a bunch of different things. I'm always like, okay, whatever I'm focused on, like I'm all in, and I'm like obsessed with the sport and obsessed with the guys doing it and all this type of
Yep.
stuff. I used to BMX and skateboard, and it was the same way. It was like when I was skateboarding, it was only skateboarding, and like I knew who all the guys were. I was watching all the videos. Same with
Okay.
the BMX. Then I would stop skateboarding, just only BMX. You know what I mean? Like so, I'm
Yeah.
always like
Yeah.
and very like into whatever I'm doing as far as like a hobby at the time. You know, so
So at what point do you officially truly get the bug and say, okay, I'm enjoying this. Maybe I want to take this like to the limit and be a pro?
so yeah, I'd probably say the first show I definitely got the bug, but I knew I was like, okay, like I could actually be pretty good at this. But I wasn't ever really thinking about like pro card or anything like that. I
Yep.
did my second show the next year, and I was really just like, I want to win. You know, I was just like, I've always been a person that I've never been too ahead of myself. Like I've always been a big preacher as like focus on the small goal to get to the big goal, as like I just like to say.
Yep.
Meaning like, okay, so if I got third or second, like my next goal is to win a show at that caliber and then go from there. You know, like where a lot of guys are like they skip right over that and they just want to go get the pro card, or you know what I mean, or
They
whatever.
win one show and they want to go to nationals already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was always pretty good at like as far as that goes. So I would say I really didn't get that crazy bug until I did my first NPC show, which was
Okay.
2016, and I had won the overall, like my first NPC show, and like I was with the big boys, and I
Yeah.
hopped on the PEDs, and I was like, oh wow, like I could actually maybe be pro one day if I just win an overall, you know, my first time in the NPC. Because like I won't lie, like it was fun competing in the natty organization, but it was like I never really like looked at it as like,
More
you
of a
know,
hobby.
yeah, yeah. So like I never really looked at those guys like, oh, they're gonna make a living and like do you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
once I switch over to the NPC, I was like, okay, now it's sort of like is you know turning my brain as far as like the next steps and like how to go about this type thing, you know.
So I do this. If I do the math, not to open up the can of worms. So you waited about maybe 4 or 5 years before you turned to PEDs. If I just kind of loosely think about it.
Like three, I think. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'd done my first couple shows and I did two natural shows and the next one that I did, I got third, and I was like sort of like bumming and like a little bit like mad, not mad, but like I was like, okay, now I'm gonna like that was
Yep.
like the push I needed. Like if I probably won, I probably would have stayed natural. You know what I mean? So it was like almost like, all right, we're gonna you know go all in and you know sort of like take this to the next level and that kind of stuff. So that's when I first started taking PDs was in 2015. Like
Okay.
after that show, and I was like really responsible with it. And I'd always like put good thought into it, did a lot of research, and was never you know just one of those people that's like, oh, just tomorrow I'm just gonna start. You know, I
Yeah.
felt like I was very responsible and you know put a lot of time and effort into making sure it was the right decision because I did know by doing all this research like once I do it I know I'll probably never go back, you know,
Sure.
which a
Sure.
lot of guys don't really maybe think about that when they first start, you know, but um so yeah, no, it was definitely the right decision though, you know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty with that because again, that's a big thing, as you say, in today's society, is people work out for 6 to 8 months and they already want to start pumping stuff.
Right, right. No, I mean, I would say, luckily for me in my bodybuilding endeavors, I think, like I said, it was a lot from my past and like, you know, being in recovery and that kind of stuff where it taught me a lot about, you know, being a man and being responsible and like a lot of the stuff that I went through, the work in recovery,
Yep.
definitely owe a lot of it to that process, to the man I am today. So like I went through a big part of my story is honestly going through the 12 steps in AA, which
Okay.
a lot of people hear AA and they're like cringe or whatever, but it's so much different because it's the 12 steps in the book that they give you. It teaches you as far as like, a lot of people that aren't addicts could probably use as far as like, looking at
Yeah.
our internal damage, looking at, our wrongs and our rights, looking at, why do I behave this way or why do I lash out at people or, sort of just looking at internally and trying to fix that kind of stuff as far as like, okay, I can sort of be, you know, a free person as far as like spiritual goes. Because
Yep.
like I was saying, like when I did use, drugs when I first started, it was because of all that stuff internally,
Hmm.
like trying to feel better or get outside of my own self. Whereas like going through that process, now I was able to be by myself, be comfortable, and like love myself, you know? So
Yep.
it definitely carries over in a lot to bodybuilding. And like, as far as like my way of thinking and like sort of doing things the right way, in my opinion, you know?
So Nate, between the Natural Federation and the NPC, how many shows do you think you did before you did an actual pro qualifier?
So with the natural shows and the NPC, I did uh, seven or six shows. Yeah. So I did. Like I said, I was responsible in the regard of like the way I did things. So
Yep.
when I did the NPC in 2016, when I did my first show, I had won the overall, like I said, but that was at a Connecticut show that I really considered like it wasn't like the most competitive regional show. So then
Sure.
I did go on to the Jay Cutler Classic and gave my stab there because that was like the Boston show. It was like where I considered like probably one of the better regional shows at the time.
Yep.
So I went there to see how I would do, and that's the thing. I never really had crazy confidence. So I was like going into that show like honestly, I remember saying, "Oh, I wish I just want to place top 5," because I knew how competitive the show was, and
Yeah.
I ended up winning my class in the overall there. You know, so it was like very like holy crap! Like that's when I was like starting to be like, okay, I'm really good at this maybe. So then I went on to Junior USA's, which no one really does because they just want to go right to the pro card. But I
But do they give pro cards now with the juniors? Do they still give like one or no?
not for bodybuilding, no,
Okay. Okay.
just like the other divisions.
Okay.
But like I was an old school guy. Like I said, I'm obsessed with bodybuilding, so I was watching the guys like Kevin Levrone and like Paul DeMeo and like all these dudes
Oh
that were
yeah.
junior nationals and the junior USA's before they went to nationals. So I was sort of like mimicking that. So I went on to junior USA's the same year, and I ended up winning my class in the heavyweight class out of like 12 guys. So I was like, oh, damn, this is pretty. And I barely lost overall to the super. He was just a monster. But
Okay.
so at that point, I was like, okay, I won my class of junior USA's. So then I was like, okay, I feel like that gives me enough, to go give a stab at a pro qualifier, which I then went to do NPC nationals, the one
Yep.
at the year, and I really got my butt kicked, honestly. So
Okay.
it was tough. Like, and that's why I tell a lot of younger guys too, is like, it's just a different level when you get to nationals, and the problem is like there's the discrepancy is such a big gap.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like a lot of guys, like just because you win an overall at a regional show doesn't mean you're going to go and place top 5 at nationals. Like everyone's won
Yeah.
overall, in their backyards at that show. So it was definitely an eye opener for me. And the first time I really got like humbled, So it was definitely one of those things where I was like, in the moment, I was like, it hurt a lot, honestly. And I was just like, how, I guess that's when you're like, okay, my reaction is everything at this point. So I was really like hurting for like a day or two. And then I was like, okay, like F this, like let's turn it up. Like time to like,
Yep.
I took a year off, and, just, it just motivated me to get better.
Because the way I hear you is you are coming up like the previous generation. When you said you started competing in 12, I think it's in 2012, where again now, and I hate to beat up on the new generation, but they do 2 shows and I'm going to jump on a national stage.
Yeah.
Where again, back in the 90s, even 2000s, you might be 6, 8, 10, 12 shows before you do a national qualify. I should say national show.
Right. Hmm.
But, that's just
Yeah.
me being the grizzled veteran here.
Well, I mean, that's why a lot of guys too, they end up, they sort of go through what I went through, but they didn't even like do as much to get there. And it's like sort of like humbling and it hurts a lot. Like a lot of guys, because I coach too, so I deal with a lot of newer guys and stuff like that. And a lot of guys will be like, well, I don't really care, because they'll preface this like, dude, I don't know if you're ready. Like what happens if you like, don't place very well? How are you going to react? Da, da, da. And they'll be
Yep.
like, well, I don't care. I just want to go for the experience and like just to see how I stack up. But the problem is when they end up being last call outs and they only get looked at for 10 seconds after the
Yeah.
show, that changes, and they're like really pissed off, and when they're going into it, they're like, oh yeah, no, I'll be fine. But and once you're sitting in the last call out watching everyone else go in front of you, like that's when you're like, oh wow, that's tough.
Let's go back a few years, 2021 Nationals. You're up against Carlos Thomas Jr. And that guy's a little freak or anomaly too.
Yeah.
Um, what are you thinking? Are you feeling obviously feeling good in the show because you placed second behind him, correct?
Yep. Yep.
And that's no small feat because again, I see Carlos, he's crazy.
Yeah. No, he's a freak, man. Like, and at that point, I would say I was sort of a front runner going into it because at that point, Carlos didn't really compete honestly that often. He still doesn't, but I had done so at that point. I had placed top three at nationals or North Americans, I think three times. Yeah,
Yep.
three times. So 2019, I was runner up two times, and then 2020, I was third to. I actually went up against Nick Walker when he
Oh,
turned pro
geez.
at
Okay.
North Americans. So I had this thing of going where I would keep showing up to these national shows, sort of be like a guy looking at, but then there would be like a guy like Nick Walker or Carlos, would show up. So the thing with Carlos though, it was like I went against Nick in North Americans and I was like, oh man, this is tough. Like I know I'm not going to beat him honestly, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try my hardest and like come in and I still looked really great. But it was like you just sort of knew like at that point, like Nick was already a pro, like because he did USA's and got second to Zach Merkel,
Okay.
and at that point he's like 5'6", like 240, like shredded, and you're like, it's insane, So that one I was definitely going into it like I probably won't win. But I feel like with Carlos, I felt like I had a chance because his conditioning was never like amazing. He
Yeah.
was always trying to figure out. I feel like they're sort of still trying to figure it out, but like as far as like his conditioning and get his preps and like sort of like things going smoothly per se.
Okay.
So I was like, and I was always known for like great conditioning. So I was like, man, if I can just come in shredded enough, maybe I have a chance to beat him. Obviously that didn't happen, but Carlos actually looked really good for that show. But yeah, it was a great show though because I'm really happy that I got my pro card there, even if it was the second place pro card, because there were so many good guys in that show. So when I did the supers, there was 25 guys in my class supers,
Wow. Okay. That's crazy.
and then the heavyweights were like I think 40 guys, and you had the two guys that turned pro were Justin Shire
Yep.
and then Jordan Janowitz. So
Yeah. Of course.
two Olympians. And then the middleweights, Justin Jacoby got his pro card there. He was really good. And the light heavyweights were really good. I think Mike Condell. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's a
Yeah.
real
I have. Yeah.
yeah. So he's all those guys were at that show and got their pro card. So it was a pretty really good, like one of the best nationals I would say in like the recent years as far as like 5 or 10 years or something. So I was pretty like happy about that. At least you can't really hang your head too low. If you're with that
Yeah.
company and placing right around those guys. So
The way you're describing Nick, though, take apart the recent craziness.
yeah.
It sounds like you kind of felt in your mind that this guy's going to be like a beast to reckon with in the pros.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely could see it, and also it was funny because I still remember this to this moment. There was just one instance where Nick goes up for his routine, and I'm just sitting on the side, like I think I was after him or like right before him. And people, when they were just watching from the side,
Yeah.
you can't really get that much of a great view. But I'm watching Nick from the side. I'm like insane, just like so much muscle and so like conditioned, and it was just like it was wild because I at that point I never really seen anything like that crazy that close. So I was
Yeah.
like, damn, this dude is the real deal. And when he went into Chicago, I was like, man, I wouldn't honestly be surprised because he did a show like 6 weeks later or something like that. And I was like, I wouldn't
Okay.
be surprised if he honestly wins the show, So, and then obviously he went on and won New York. So it was like, the next year. But yeah, no, I could definitely see it, Nick. And the funny part is because me and Nick sort of came up together because I remember him, he was doing USA's as like a light heavyweight.
Hmm.
He was coached by Jeff Long or whatever. So like he really didn't look like much at that point. Like he was placing well and he was getting in good condition, but his shape wasn't really that amazing, and he was sort of like funky looking. But then
Yeah.
once he became a super, it was like his shape improved. I know he still gets knocked for it, but his shape is actually way better than what it used to be. It keeps getting better and better. So just and honestly knowing his work ethic, but it was funny because honestly Nick was just another normal national type guy. But then once he made that jump to supers with Dominic Cardone, he
Yeah.
put on
Yeah.
he put on like a ton of muscle in like a year and a half. I don't, like the OGs will remember it, and the nerds like us, but like a lot of people don't remember that time. They just remember like when Nick got really good, right? Um,
Yeah.
but
I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know Nick personally. He's got almost like, and I'm going to be way off here. I look at his physique almost like the Branch Warren, where it's
right.
grainy and dense, but it's almost like unique because you can't put him against like a Samson, which is tall and X Factor, and you can't put him against a Hadi, which is, well, you know what I mean, though. It's kind of like it's unique to a point.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing with Nick is obviously he has his flaws, so it's only going to take him so far. I mean, I hope he wins the Olympia one day. That'd be a pretty cool story, But obviously, he's always going to be up against sort of he has more genetic flaws than some of these top guys, right? Like a Samson or Andrew or some of these guys, So he's
Yep.
like his card is like that gnarly, conditioned, hard muscle like branch, like you're saying.
That's it. And like everything, though, it's all subjective. It's, you walk in and they want hard and grainy or they want lean and, it's one of those things.
It's tough, man. Yeah, bodybuilding stuff like that.
So let's talk about this year or just in general, when you compete, how do you decide what shows you're going to do and how many shows? I mean, how far do you think that out?
So usually I have my next show picked in mind like within a week after my last show. Honestly,
Okay.
I'm usually pretty like on top of it as far as like the plan of attack. Like, I mean, I'll give some time to like rest and gather my thoughts, but I'm usually like always thinking internally. But usually it's the time frame. So meaning like, okay, I know I need X amount of time to improve this year. So I'll choose this show because it gives me the amount of time I need essentially. So it's never really like necessarily like I'm picking a show because I like that show. It's more or less like this year, I did Toronto and Tampa. And the reason why I chose Toronto was because it gave me a little bit more time to improve.
Yep.
And I also knew as a pro, I'm like I said, I'm a pretty open book. So I knew Toronto. Well, it ended up being pretty competitive, but I was looking at Toronto like maybe it won't be as competitive because if you remember, New York Pro this year was insane. It was
Yes.
stacked. Like, top 10 was crazy. And this year in general was just so much more competitive than the previous year because a lot of guys had sat out. Like a lot of guys didn't compete in 2023 and then they did in 2024. And this year right now has been crazy competitive. So for a guy like me, I'm I know I'm not going to go win the New York Pro. You know what I mean? So I'm the
Yep.
type of guy where I'm going to strategically try to pick. I'll be honest with you, the weaker shows, and think of like, okay, who's going to maybe not show up here or there.
Yeah.
So, but I also am not afraid to do big shows because I've obviously been up against Nick Walker as an amateur and these guys, so I've never, shied away from it. But because I mean, I did do Tampa as my second show, and that's obviously always a stacked show. So,
Yep. And you
but
did New York Pro this year too, right?
not this year. That was last year in 20.
Last year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So last year I did New York and Vancouver, and then this year I did Toronto and Tampa. And but yeah, usually however much time I sort of need to make the improvements that I want to make. So
Gotcha. How long is your average prep? How long is your average prep?
I do like a longer prep. So I like 20 weeks usually because like
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, usually I'm itching to prep because like it's uncomfortable being like so heavy and eating so much food. Where I guess a lot of people don't understand that or until you get to that level where like okay you're 290 plus pounds in your off season and eating like 6,000 calories, it's super uncomfortable, you're very lethargic,
Yep.
you just don't really have much energy and you're usually like not the happiest mood. So it can be honestly pretty tough. So I'm usually like itching to get out of that position and start my prep. So I usually like to start a little bit earlier of a prep, and honestly like I've always been the type of person I want to be ready early, and you can honestly control the peak more, much better that way. Meaning, like I like
Yep.
to, be ready early and do like pull back on cardio, maybe like a week out, maybe a week and a half out, and start increasing food, and that's going to bring a nice fresher look to me.
Yep.
I don't want to be like I never like to be like fighting to the finish line to get in shape. That's never a good feeling, and mentally too. And it can be very stressful. Like, oh, am I going to be in shape or not? That's not a great feeling.
Yeah, and you actually, and this isn't an insult, you actually look lean though. Like that's another thing too. With today's generation, I feel that they don't get like sloppy overweight like a
Yeah,
lot of the guys back in the yesteryear, where they just don't even you'd ever think they lifted a weight,
yeah.
And I think it's a different mindset now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say more people are staying leaner now, and like we've sort of figured that out over time. Like, obviously, there's going to be a time and place for everything, but because I was the type of guy where I would get dramatically heavier, and then I would pull down, and then I would pull down like 30, 35 pounds,
Yep.
but I would gain like 5 to 7 pounds. So that's how I did do my off season for a while, like an OG, like the eat a lot, pull down, have like 5 or 7 pounds of muscle. Whereas now, I think so. This off season is a little different. I am leaner now, so I'm like 270 right now.
Okay.
Whereas like last time this year, I would probably be like 285 or 280 because I was just like pushing like that. Where now I feel like because I have like maturity to my muscle, I have
Sure.
so much training wisdom. Like I really feel like I'm so locked in with my training as far as like how to progress through training. So I am taking a little bit of different approach as far as my off season this year, where I'm trying to stay leaner, and also for me, it is getting harder to get in shape. The type of condition I want to get into, at least, I've always been. I can always get in shape, but there's different levels, right? Like I want that Hadi conditioning,
Of
So
course.
if I'm leaner, my objective is hopefully I can prep will be a lot easier. And also too, for me, I've always been the type of person that I can like usually grow in my preps.
Hmm.
So if I can start leaner, with use more food, I think I'll be able to have a better response than normal as far as like growing in prep. So that's sort of where my mindset is at now. And also having, like I said, like once you get to a point of like I was on stage at 250, so it's like
Okay.
now I have that mature muscle, a lot of muscle density. So I feel like I can sort of like I can do that. Whereas like probably 5 years ago, I wouldn't advise myself to do that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. What does training look like in the I guess in prep season?
So in prep, usually like 3 on, 1 off.
Okay.
Not necessarily push pull legs, but a sort of similar, but more of like customized. So instead of doing like, you know, chest, delts, and tries for my push, I would do more like maybe chest and arms or delts and arms.
Okay.
Whereas that might be a little bit too much for me. I'm not a huge. I'm in the middle of the road as far as volume goes. Like I chain with some volume, and I like using intensifiers, but I'm not in the gym for like 3 hours either, but I am in the
Sure.
gym probably for an hour and a half, training. So it's
Okay.
still in the middle. And I'm also a very big advocate as far as rest. And for me too, I'm very good at being intuitive with my body, meaning like I will take some unscheduled rest days too if I'm
Good.
feeling it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I'm a big believer in like if you feel like you got to take rest, you probably should. And most I would say all the time you're never gonna have like a negative effect from that.
Sure.
Like I never have taken a rest day and been like, oh wow, I lost some gains because I took a rest day. You know what I mean? It's usually the outcome is always positive, right? So like my pumps will be better, my joints will be better, like just feeling fresher,
Yep.
maybe a full night's sleep. Whereas like sometimes I might be super tired, and I'm not taking like unscheduled rest days off every week, right? So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like that, but like, hey, if I'm not feeling it, maybe I'll take a rest day and I'll feel much better and attack legs the next day. Whereas, if I went in that day, it probably wouldn't be as beneficial.
And sometimes it's not just for the muscles; it's more for the mental too. Because even if you want to recharge this thing too.
Oh, 100%. Especially too, like after you've been doing it, I've been doing it like 12 or 13 years. So
Yeah.
it can take a toll on you. And it's not the same as when you're younger. And like, it's always fun, my first couple of years of training, but you get to a point where you've been doing it long enough and you are a little bit more serious as far as like, you know, now it's like a reflection of like, my platform and my brand and like,
Yeah.
there's way more variables to sort of look at instead of just like, hey, I'm just going to go have fun and like kill it. And it's a great time. That's when you're like, green and new. Once you're like sort of a pro, there's a little bit more. It's not it's still fun to me, but it was definitely more joyful when you're young and dumb and you don't know anything. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. So
And what about meals? Well, like what you high carb, low carb? Like what are your general meals during prep?
so I would say I usually get a good amount of food. I'm usually more of like a in the middle of the ground protein, higher carb, lower fat.
Okay.
So usually my fat's around like 30, 40 grams, and then my carbs usually around like 400 most of prep. Well, not like what I mean, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pretty comfortable essentially. But usually the problem is when I get to like 5 weeks out, it's when I really have to like push and push hard. Like, so it's almost like I got to work 3 times harder once I get to that 5 weeks out mark because it's all about getting the glutes and the hams in now.
Sure. And that's scary too. How much it's important to the guys as it is to the girls.
So that's the hard part is like I can get in shape from the front, probably off of like 400 grams of carbs, maybe 300, fairly
Okay.
comfortable and feeling good. But then at 5 weeks out, it's like okay, now I gotta get the glutes in, and it's like I gotta start doing doubles of cardio. I gotta start doing some like my carbs did get down to 120 grams of carbs last prep.
Wow.
We're
Okay.
like you know, 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, where I'd have like maybe a high day every like 5 or 6 days, you know. So it's definitely hard, you know, but the majority of my prep is fairly easy. And then I would say like the last quarter of it is miserable, you know. So
Are you a high cardio guy, or do you more manipulate the food?
um probably more relying on like the food, but
Okay.
I will say, you know, my cardio's gotten up to like, you know, an hour and a half. Like I've done two 45-minute sessions, you know, so that's not like,
Yep.
but that would probably be like only for 2 weeks, you know. So like let's say, you know, I'm on like the 120 grams of carbs and I'm like 3 weeks out. Well, that last week and a half, maybe I'll do, you know, doubles of cardio, the
Okay.
45, and just to get that extra bit of skin off the glutes, the little bit of that body fat off there.
Sure.
Um, so, but mostly I would rely on the food first, you know what I mean, and like manipulate it that way and try to get the body fat off, and then hammer the cardio. The good thing for me is like I know my body pretty well at this point, so I'm pretty good at maintain or um, I'm pretty good at like holding on to muscle, right? So like I can usually like I don't go flat too easily. I can
Okay.
usually stay within like good muscularity when I'm pushing hard. So that's a good thing that I have on me. I mean, it sort of sucks sometimes because you're like, man, I would love a refeed, but it's like you don't really warrant it because your look is fine. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the O, if you don't mind, Mr. Olympia here.
Oh,
Did they get it right in your opinion? Did they get the standings right?
yeah. I think so after looking at the videos, but I won't lie. I wanted Hadi because I am like I said earlier, I am a conditioning guy, so
Sure.
I sort of lean on like for me, I would like to see a Mr. Olympia in better condition. I guess if I'm like being nitpicky, but
Sure.
I can also see like the fact that say that they said, "Hey, Samson, we want you to come in tighter, and we'll give the Olympia." Well, he did that, so you know I think he delivered enough as far as like what they're looking for. And Hadi, unfortunately, was slightly off, like which is annoying because I hate when people say that because he's like so good even off.
Yeah.
Well, but like if you look at his Arnold, the Ohio was probably like his best look ever, in my opinion, and his glutes weren't like as sharp and as good as like maybe this Olympia. You know what I'm saying? Which I still think he looked
Yep.
phenomenal, but like it's hard because the judges are always going to look at your other showings and compare, even if they say they don't, they do. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
especially the pros and like the guys with big names, right? So it's like the same thing with like Phil Heath when like everyone always wanted to look like 2011 and 2013 after, but it was like that's not going to happen. Like you know what I mean? So
Yep. So who surprised you, either good or bad, for the Olympia?
I mean, Martin is amazing, dude.
Yes.
Like it's
I think
crazy.
it's
Like I
universal with Martin.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like he's got it all, you know. He's just so complete. His glutes and his hamstrings are ridiculous. Like that's like when I'm training glutes and hams right now, that's what I'm thinking about is like I want them like Martins, you know, like they're insane, like shredded, detailed, hard as rocks, you know, and his back is super developed. He's just you know, really good. And then I would say obviously, you know, Andrew Jack was a little bit of a disappointment because all of us want to see him come in peeled and like look insane, right? Because he's got the, in my opinion, he's my favorite physique and probably the best physique as far as like
Yeah.
overall. And obviously he has to like put the finishing touches on to fulfill that. But if you look at everyone throughout, you know, I think he has the best, you know, potential as far as having the best physique. I guess I'll say that, you know, and also,
Yeah.
I mean, I got to give props to Keon, man. Keon really just,
I think he was
he
the
showed.
MVP for the whole weekend, regardless of division. If you look at the beat last year and this year, lights out.
Agree. It was insane, and the transformation, like when you look at his back double comparison of
Oh,
last
crazy.
year's, it's like what? That's insane. Like the amount he leveled up is not just muscularity, but condition wise. It's just like man, he just had it all that weekend. You know.
Yeah. I'll tell you, for me, who surprised me the most, nobody was talking about him, was William Bonac. Like,
Mm.
he's another one that people overlook, but to see him hit seventh, and just the way he stormed Samson and his wife, it was like a touching
Yeah,
moment.
it was so cool. And like, yeah, dude, like it's crazy. Like he's still showing up, still looking amazing. I couldn't believe it. Like even when he was doing, and that's the thing too. People forget he already done like 3 European shows. I think before that, you know what I mean. Then
Yeah.
like for his age to do like 3 or 4 shows and like still show up at the Olympia really good because a lot of guys fall victim to you know doing 3 4 shows chasing that O qualification. Then they get to Olympia and they just look like crap because they're just tired and they you know
Yep.
spent all their energy on those other shows, right?
Do you think, because obviously you're a Hadi fan, do you think Hadi has it to dethrone Samson? Do you think he'll ever get another O under his belt?
I mean, I think so because the thing is with Samson is like, okay, is he going to be able to show up consistently with this same,
Hmm.
right? Because obviously we've been waiting for him to get into this look and condition, whatever. So it's like, is he going to be consistent too with that? You know what I mean? Like it's like Derek, right? I mean, like he looked amazing last year, but this year it's like he was pretty off, in my opinion. So it's like
Yeah.
the thing about bodybuilding too is like, unless you're Phil Heath, no, but like everyone I feel like is beatable because I've seen so many times where someone could beat someone 2 weeks before the show, and then there's another show 2 weeks later, and they flip flop because peaking. Like these guys
Yep.
are all so good, and like really, no one's like crazy above one another, and it's really about like who peaks perfectly on that day. Because like let's be honest, like if Hadi showed up in the Arnold, Ohio look, would he beat Samson? I think so because like
Yeah.
scorecards were already super close, right? So it's like imagine if he was just that much better, So it's like that's the thing of like what's so fun about pro bodybuilding is like the guys are all so equal to each other. Like if someone peaks perfectly, you know what I mean? Like that's the game changer, right? Which
Yep.
is very, very far and few between. That's another thing too, is like no one is really like no one was really like super perfect except for Martin, in my opinion. Like everyone they all look great,
Yeah.
but like they could always be like that much better. Like Hunter brought his best look ever on Friday, but could he have been a little bit better? Sure. You know what I mean? So that's the thing too, is like there's always it's hard at this level because like peaking is so crucial and it's so hard to like come in perfectly. And that's why you always hear like analysis like before the Olympia or whatever, like, oh, does anyone ever show up perfect? It's like, no, not really, right? They're all
Yeah.
amazing, so not to discredit them in any way. Like this was
That's
like one
it.
of the best top tens I've seen in a while, quality wise was so good.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll ever see another where it's like literally like lights out. Like I think it was the 2003. Ronnie walked out and was like, "Okay, who's got second and third, fourth?"
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be cool to see if Samson can keep like improving on his conditioning because that's a possibility too. So it'll be really interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see this year with Samson competing more. Like is that going to affect him at the Olympia? Which obviously this year it didn't, but like it's
Yeah,
going to be a little different. Every prep is different.
and I'm sure you've heard this, Nate. Just think about it. He's doing the Arnold. If he wins that, he'd make over $1 million in 2 shows, which is batty.
Yeah, that's sick. That's so awesome. Like he really it's pretty cool because like the story overall is just really cool and I'm not like a huge fan or anything, but like I do appreciate him as a bodybuilder and I do appreciate like him sort of shutting up all the people and like just like everything about it was just like, he did the France show, which was like everyone's like, no, you shouldn't do
Yep.
that. He took the shirt off. Everyone's like, no, you shouldn't do that. His wife is coaching him. No, you know what I mean? So like all these things, which I like him even more and I respect him as a man for like being like, hey, I'm gonna do my own thing. Whatever you
Yep.
guys say doesn't gonna bother me. I'm just gonna stay in my lane and do what I believe is best for myself and not listen to any of the outside noise. And then for him to also win like the gold Sandow and the 600,000 and the
Crazy.
ring, it's like, holy crap! Like, dude couldn't have had a better pinnacle in life. You know what I mean? Like,
He's a throwback to like the 90s bodybuilder, and I don't know if it was Milos's influence or back in the 90s all the top tiers would compete multiple times. Like every show you'd have a Sean Ray or a Kevin or a
yeah,
Flex or a Chris Cormier, where you fast forward now it's like they train for one show, which is disappointing to a point.
yeah. And also, I think I'm just gonna be real. I think just guys are scared to lose, so they don't do more than Olympia, which. That's why I give my hats off to Samson too. Is like, hey, this dude is fearless. He's going into these shows knowing he could lose and knowing that his stock could be devalued. I mean, look what happened to Nick Walker, man. Like, even if he did show
Yeah.
up, like he still won, but like social media is such a crazy thing now. Like he just got like I feel like he got backlash and he won the show. You know what I mean? But it's like because Martin was so
Yeah.
close that people were almost like it was almost like it hurt him by doing the New York. You know what I mean? Like whereas Samson has such a strong mentality, I feel like it doesn't affect him, which is really cool to see.
But Nate, let's be honest here, and I've said this on one of my other podcasts: is you're a bodybuilder, you're a professional. The
Yeah,
only way to get better is to compete more times. And I understand the health risks. I mean, but take that out though, you should still be on stage a couple of times to go through the preps, pose, everything else. Doing it once a year, is not going to really get you that much better.
Oh, I'm definitely right there with you, and I agree. And also, like, that's the thing too is like, imagine if Derek has done like the last show he's done besides the Olympia was like Tampa in 2019. Like, think about
Yeah,
that. So how many times has he had practice peaking or perfecting his look where maybe if he'd done more shows, you know what I mean, maybe they would have it more nailed in as far as like peaking Derek and having the right look and the right formula. And so I definitely agree. Is like, and it's also good knowledge that you're gaining as far as like your own body and
sure.
like how you're responding and like and just being on stage more just makes you a better bodybuilder as far as like presentation, feeling confident, feeling
Exactly.
comfortable. And like
Nate,
that's the thing too is like, hey, if you only do the one show a year, it's like by the time that show rolls around the Olympia again, it's like, are you gonna have like much confidence or stage presentation, being on the big stage,
exactly, exactly. Nate, did I read on Instagram you're taking next year off? Did I read that right?
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of competing a lot, but no, but I've
That was
actually
wasn't meant to set you up. I promise.
no, I will say I usually do compete a lot, so I'm never like victim of that. Like one year I did do 6 shows in a row. I've done like 3 shows in a row. I've done a lot of like North Americans and nationals back to back. But for me, I guess I'm 38,
Yep.
so now I'm just looking at it more. Um, how can I be my best? And I know I haven't taken a year off since 2017, so
Okay.
for me, I think a year off, just obviously just focusing on improvements. Like I'm still bodybuilding to the fullest, I'm still eating, breathing. I'm just looking at it like, how can I be my best? And I think, taking a year off can really give me some solid improvements because I know like there's 2 other times where I did take time off. Like I took a year off and I had a longer off season one year and I just really leveled
Okay.
up both those times. So I'm just looking at it as far as progression because I do feel like I do need to put on more muscle and I do need to fill in some more gaps because I am like 5'10", 5'11". So I could, if I compare myself to like other guys that were 5'10", 5'11", like with similar genetics, like I probably should be like more like 260 on stage. You know what I mean? Which sounds
Yep.
crazy, but like it is what it is. Like like Steve Kuklos and like Luke, or I mean James Hong said like other white guys that are like 5'10", 5'11", because it does make a difference. Like
Sure.
why would those black dudes have Hall balloons and like they're like 220 pounds and they look like 260? It's like what the hell? Like remember
Yeah.
when Phil and Flex Wheeler turned pro at like what 190 or like won the Arnold at like 198
Yeah.
or something like that, and like Phil was like so pretty light for a while, like so for me I just feel like, and it's not all about the scale, but I'm just like using it as far as like other
Sure.
people and like just basic knowledge and stuff like that. So and like
Yep.
the thing is, like, I just know I don't have a lot of years left in me. I do, but I don't, So, like, I still feel fresh and young in bodybuilding because I got a later start. But
12 years. Yeah. You still are young, even though your body's probably not feeling like it.
right, right. So, I guess I'm just looking at like how can I be my best, and also too, I am looking at like doing Detroit and New York. So,
Okay.
for me, like you were saying, how do I pick out shows? Well, that's changed a little bit too because now I am finding that I think certain judges like certain looks or whatever. So I'm trying to find the judge that likes mine. And I know Tyler Mannion, I feel like he's the best judge for me. So
Okay.
I know Detroit and New York, he judges both those, head judges them. And also too, like, not to sound weird, but like the lighting there is amazing and
Yeah.
very frustrating as an athlete, especially a pro, when you go to shows and you like kill yourself to look insane. And I know I do, but the pictures don't show up the same as like they would at like a New York or Detroit where the backdrop is just much better, darker.
Yeah.
Where I did Tampa, I don't know if you saw the backdrops, but they're horrible. It was like yellow and green and in
A lot of
tropical.
movement. Yeah.
There was a lot going on, and Toronto's always known for like having not great lighting either. So I guess I just am looking. So like all those variables sort of come into play. You
Yep.
know,
So Nate, what are the judges telling you? Is there something specific, or are you just trying to put size on all over?
I mean, so Tyler did tell me he wants me just to be tighter, which was off of Tampa, which is
Okay.
understandable. So this last year I came in Toronto pretty shredded, pretty like I would say on the lighter side, that's what I like and that's what I usually do. But after Toronto, they were sort of saying like, hey, they want me like bigger and fuller.
Yep.
Those judges I didn't really know that well, so I went to Tampa, which was like an 8-week stretch in between. to try to get a little bit of a rebound, to try to like feel a little bit more, which I did like the look, but like I wasn't as dry as I normally am. And like I was talking about before, sometimes you are judged off your previous showings.
Yep.
Tyler was sort of like specific about that, like, hey, like we know the type of conditioning you bring, and like, yeah, sure, you're like your glutes were in and like you look good, but like your conditioning is just not what we've seen it, you know.
Yep.
So pretty
Okay.
much like get back to my old. He literally said like get back to your nationals conditioning. So you know, so that's sort of what they want. So I guess I don't necessarily. I could probably not take the time off, but I do want to be a better bodybuilder overall, and my just by myself. And I
Yep.
would like to
Okay.
be like a little bit bigger and like bring up my chest and my back and my glutes and my hams. So like there's some definitely some big focus points there. Like my backside, I definitely would like to improve and get more density to it. So
So you're thinking maybe Vancouver, New York of 2026?
Detroit and New York,
Detroit.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and then also too, I might do Pittsburgh too because now that they do that, it's like right around New York.
And plus the money now for Pittsburgh, I think what they now it's 100,000 or something.
Yeah, that's crazy, but it's cool they're doing open finally. Like remember they were doing the guest posings all those years.
Yep.
Now they finally actually got open at the Pittsburgh show, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Nate, I'm going to put you on the spot. Take Martin out. Who do we keep our eyes on for next year? Whether it's current or someone that maybe just turned pro. Who are you watching? Who we keep our eyes on?
Oh man. Um, so I know he sort of flopped this year, but I am a big fan of Horse MD,
Yeah.
and he's doing the Romania show, so it'll be interesting to see how he looks. But I think he has a lot of potential as long as he can sort of stay focused on bodybuilding. And I know he's a little bit of an influencer too, so I don't know if it's you know what I mean, like where his I know he's got businesses and stuff, and so I'm not really sure how locked in he is, but I think he's a guy that could make tremendous improvements and be a really good top 10 Olympia bodybuilder.
Okay.
And obviously, speaking of Martin, is like Brett, his training partner, like another full off season, like he could definitely be
Yeah.
then at the Olympia, I think. And I'm impressed with Hunter too. And I know he's like sort of been around for a while, but like I think a new era of Hunter is hopefully becoming because I think maybe after Olympia he'll see like what his capabilities are like because I
Yep.
think compared to what he's previous brought like his Olympia look was just like smoked all of them, you know what I mean? So like and is with the new size, so
And plus, he wasn't sweating. I know in the past
yeah.
he had a big sweating problem. This year, I think he had that under wraps, which is good.
And then I mean, like we were talking about earlier, Carlos, but I don't know like what
Yeah.
the deals are as far as like I know he's been dealing with some like UC or like some digestion stuff. So I don't know if he can figure that out. Like that kid could be very special. You know what I mean? If he can like sort of figure out his preps and like how to get in shape and
Yeah.
he's just got the goods. Like his shape, his size, like it's pretty amazing.
I'll tell you who I'd love to see on the Olympia stage if he ever gets his Beckroos.
Oh yeah.
People had him top 6, if not better. That guy's on fire.
Oh yeah, he's insane, and he's growing. Like he's big now. Like because I remember a couple years ago, like people were like they still want to see him at his size, and it's like, man, he's pretty big now. It's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
In ideal world, what's the end goal for you? What do you want to be top 5 in the Olympia? Do you want to win the Olympia? What's the main goal?
I mean, my main goal is just to get to Olympia. Honestly, man. Like just being
Okay.
real with you, and I just don't know if I don't know. We'll see. Like I've never been so this is a thing too. This is how I've always been, but like I've never had like the most confidence in myself. So like even when I was like trying to turn pro, I've always been like you'd ask me the same question back then, and I'd be like, "Oh man, like I hope I turn pro." You know what I mean? Or like
Yeah, yeah.
I've always been like I've always had like downplaying myself, which sucks, but like it's good too. At the same time, it sort of keeps me like humble and in the middle. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
like because I remember at a time I was like didn't even think I'd get over like 240 on stage. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh no, I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it never deterred me from the work. You know what I mean? Like I've always like worked hard and like always like put in the work and trained my ass off and followed the diet and did all the you know what I mean to the T. So it's like either way the results are going to come or they're not. I don't think it matters like whether because I'm pushing like I believe in myself. So
Sure.
it's definitely like something that I've struggled with though, as far as like I've never been the Nick Walker or Sean Clarita where they're like, hey, I'm gonna win the Olympia one day and I'm gonna tell you, you know what I mean? Like sort of really
Yeah.
self belief is like amazing in those guys. So
So Nate, here's a question I want you to think about. You would 100% dream lineup, current or in the past, who would you love to sit left to right of you?
Um,
Regardless of how you'd place, who would you want to stand aside alongside of?
uh, it's probably gonna be like very weird together, but Nasser El Somebody
Love it.
and honestly, it's a weird one, but Luke Sandow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, just because like just really big fans of theirs, and like, and I feel like if I could get more size, like I could be like similar to those guys. I just need like the size, you know. But those are the guys I look up to as far as like, you know, like if I can put on another 10 pounds, I feel like I could like sort of look similar to those guys, you know.
Yep.
Or I mean, Justin Compton too. He's nasty. He's got a sick physique.
There was one year that Milos always talks about that Nasser should have beat Ronnie. I don't remember if it was 2002. Do you think Nasser should have ever beat Ronnie?
Well, honestly, I'm not as well versed as Milos as far as like the side shows. Like he knows like all those like European shows
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that, so I'm not really sure. But like, I don't know. Ronnie's
Who's
definitely
Ronnie?
he's the goat to me. You know, like I love Phil, but like I would say Ronnie then Phil. You know, if I would go,
Okay.
he's just I feel like he's too dominating. You know what I mean? Like his
Yeah,
physique is very dominant. You know what I mean? As far as like size and just like it's like holy shit. Whereas like Phil is like pretty flowing. Like
sure.
you know he doesn't like step in a lineup and like holy crap. You know what I mean? Like whereas like Ronnie like sticks out like a freaking like sore thumb. You know in a lineup. Whereas like you know, Phil's he's not super wide. He's a little bit shorter, compact, like, you know what I mean? Whereas like Ronnie just takes up a lot of space, you know, he's just a monster.
Nate, wouldn't be a good show here if we didn't give a plug to your girlfriend. Is she getting ready for a show, or let's give her a couple of words here?
Yeah. Yeah. So Amanda's getting ready for the New England's, which is, so she's 9 days out. So not this weekend, but the next weekend. And she's looking amazing.
Okay.
This is her third show.
Oh wow. Okay.
And she's just really coming into it. Like this year, she just really leveled up in the off season and she just looks insane, and I'm just really excited for it. I'm flying up there too, so I'll be there at the show, and that's actually a really good show. Like I was saying, one of the shows that I've done that show, and like I did, it's put on by Jay Cutler,
Yep.
um, so it's a really good Boston local show for New England people. So I'm excited for her, and yeah, she just looks amazing. I'm really proud of her.
Figure or what? What division?
Yep, yep. So she's a figure girl all the way. She's got that. She got such good shape too for it. It's just like she fits that division so well. Small waist, great
Okay.
delts. You know, good quads. Just flows very well for sure.
And that's you said that's up here in 2 weeks. I'm in Boston.
Yep, yep. Boston and like you know a week and a half or whatever. So yep.
Okay. And is that a pro level qualifier or no?
So it's just a national qualifier.
Okay.
So it's just a regional show, but she'll probably use that as a qualification, and then next year probably pick out a national show. You know, maybe something like Universe or Nationals or something like that. Because like we'll see. I mean, after the show, maybe decisions will be made. But like she's at a place where I think if she went to nationals now, like she could probably get like top five or in the mix. But I think with just a little bit more time, like she could actually be a contender for like an overall title, you know, or like at a nationals or something and figure. So it's
Yeah.
like might as well just wait a little bit more and just like go like with the guns like fully loaded, you know. And it's not like she needs a full year off. It's just like if she just takes the rebound very seriously, and you know, she's just in such a good mindset too. Where I'm not. That's what another reason is like I know she's just going to kill the rebound. Like we've been talking about it. Like she's just me and her have both gone through our like food phases, you know, post
Yep.
show, like the binging and like gaining a bunch of weight. So we're both past that, and like now she's just really locked in. So like, yeah, sure, we'll enjoy some food, but like she's very good as far as like I'm not worried about like she's gonna execute and like just put on some good muscle and be ready for a national stage, you know.
Are you her coach?
No, her coach is a girl named Tanya Jean. She's a local to New England as well, and
Okay.
I always like I just like
It's slippery slope, I would think.
yeah,
Slippery slope.
exactly. I like to be a supportive boyfriend and just like be there for everything and you know carry your bag around. No, but, no, but I just like it's just better that way, you know, because it's hard to tell your significant other like, hey, you're looking fat today, you know what I mean, or whatever. So you know, like that's how they take it sometimes, you know. So
Nate, it's been a great conversation, my brother. Is there anything else as we wind down that maybe you want to let people know, the listeners, your fans, anything that maybe we haven't discussed?
um, not too much, not too much. I mean, I'm a sponsored athlete with Raw and Revive, so that's going really good, and they're down here. I'm in Florida, so those that don't know, I'm actually like a New England native. I was born and raised in New Hampshire,
Yep.
I moved down to Florida in the Tampa area about a year and a half ago just to be in like the bodybuilding environment and to obviously be in a warmer place. I'm not a huge fan of the winter, obviously. Most of us aren't, but
Yep.
I was lucky enough to be able to get down here, and it's been amazing. And but my girlfriend's not down here, which is sad. So that'll change hopefully in the future. So we've been together for probably about like 5 or 4 months now. So it's been really good though. Like just clicked right off the bat, and just both of us are just so into the sport, and just like we just have a very similar mindset. Very similar in our ways, so it just works very well. So I'm excited for our future as well. But yeah,
Awesome.
and then also like to shout out. I mean, I do coach full time. Speaking of like coaching, but it's called Never Settle Coaching. I'm on Instagram, and if you guys follow me at Instagram at Nate Spear, just like that, I
Yep.
post a lot of my clients and stuff. So that's my full time job. So I just trying to keep that going, and I got 4 people actually doing the New Englands myself. So
Oh
that'll be
wow. Okay.
so. And then I got another guy I just posted who's doing a natural show that same weekend, the Monster Mash. He looks actually insane. His name's Justin Betancourt. So I'm excited for him. He's trying to go to Worlds. I don't know. Those are that all the natural organizations, but
Okay.
there's it's like that's like their Olympia, the WNBF. They call it Worlds. So
Yep.
yeah, it's exciting stuff though. I love the coaching too. It's just it brings me a lot of. It's cool to see other people progress and get better and win, and like and then people just get in shape too and like change their life. It's just very rewarding, and I just really do enjoy it greatly. So I'm grateful for that too, honestly.
Nate, let me ask you, since you brought that up, let me ask you one question here, because everybody's a coach nowadays. Okay. I mean, respectfully,
Right.
what should people look for in a good coach? Because there's good coaches and there's great coaches, whether you want to refer
Right.
to your philosophies or just in general.
So I would say, like, if you're looking for a new coach, look for the people that have built their clients from the ground up. So you'll get a
Okay.
lot of coaches, not to say they are bad or whatever, but there's a lot of coaches that you see their star athletes, but that person might have been, coached by another person up to that point. There's a lot of people that get to a certain level and then they switch to like a big guru name or something, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I would look at the coaches that have taken it someone from like start to maybe like a top 5 national competitor, winning overall.
Yep.
Because the majority of people are gonna that's sort of what they're gonna want, because like not everyone's gonna be a freaking Nick Walker, right?
Sure.
So and the problem is too, like a lot of these big coaches like we're seeing now, it's just they don't give the same time and effort and dedication maybe to like the guys that are trying to do like the New Englands, per se.
Yep.
But like the Olympia guys, they probably all over, so it's you got to read between the lines, and then also like talk to the clients that they're coaching. It's
Mm-hmm.
like hiring someone for a job. It's really so like if you would do that outside of bodybuilding, you would want to talk to the employees right underneath them.
Definitely.
So I would use that as the same resources. Talk to the clients, see how their experience has been, see if they're happy. So if they have current clients that aren't happy, that's probably not a great thing. So most clients are going to boast about their coach. You know what I mean? You see it on the stories and like what I mean, that kind of stuff. So but the main thing is like the people that can take people that don't have amazing genetics
Yep.
and turn them into a pretty damn quality competitor. So I think those are the guys that are going to be the best, coaches for like maybe the guys getting ready for, the New Englands or maybe even nationals.
Yeah, and I think that's a great philosophy. I spoke to Martika Jones last night, who was on the Olympia stage. I asked her the same question, and she said one of the things that she did was when she's checking references, she asked about everyone's diets,
Yeah.
because some coaches are using the same diet, one size fits all, versus really knowing the person's body and changing it. So I think that's important.
I agree. Definitely.
Yeah.
Um,
So, but Nate, it's truly been a pleasure, my friend. Hopefully you join us again, maybe for a roundtable or as things get closer for your next show. But again, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
yeah, man, it's a pleasure having me on. I'm grateful for you asking me to come on, and I appreciate it, brother.
Perfect. Stay on for just a minute. But
Yep.
for everybody watching, thank you so much and have a great rest of the week.